Hey guys, if you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts. You probably like music too, I would imagine. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. You don't even need a premium account. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. The good thing is, is on Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, so you don't have to worry about it cutting in and out like I have to when I'm at work. And you can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social platforms like Instagram. Just search for the Really Rich Podcast on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me so you never miss an episode of the Really Rich Podcast. Last but not least, though, Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service. I don't know if you guys knew that. I did not, but it is. And now it can be your go-to for podcasts as well. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Adam Rich from the Really Rich Podcast. And today I want to talk to you about being it's okay to be a work in progress. It's totally okay to not be your best, not be perfect, because we all want people to think when they look at us, we don't want them to see flaws. We don't want them to be able to point out stuff and talk shit or hate on us or think that anything that we're doing is wrong or be corrected. People hate getting corrected, you know. And here's the thing, man. Nobody likes being corrected, I guess. Nobody likes being wrong, but at the same time, you should love that when somebody corrects you or when somebody shows you where you were wrong, it now gives you the opportunity to grow and be better or smarter, you know, to have more information going forward. It's not a bad thing to be wrong. I mean, listen, your entire life growing up, you don't know shit. I mean, you know what I mean? Like when you're a child, every day you're learning. You're learning shit you didn't know. And we don't find a problem with that. Like, we don't find a problem. Like, when you're a young kid, you don't find a problem with going to school and learning. I mean, you may hate school, you may hate doing homework and all that stuff, but my point is, like, it's not an issue when you're a child to be wrong or to not know something, to learn something and grow and gain knowledge and information. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's the whole point of going to school, is to learn stuff you didn't know. Like, if we already knew all of it, we wouldn't be going to school. But the problem is when we get to a certain age, it's like we want to stop being wrong. And I've struggled with this my whole life. When I was real young, I'm an only child, technically. I mean, I have two half-sisters. I didn't really grow up with them. You know, I didn't grow up really talking to them or knowing them or living with them or anything like that. But I basically grew up as an only child. And so what that means is that the majority of the people I interacted with when I'm outside of school was all adults. It was like my parents' friends, my family members, my aunts, uncles, and things like that. Or most of my cousins are older than me. I only have two that are younger. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I have one that's younger. One that's basically the same age, but she's a couple months older. But anyway, my point is, all my family members, all my cousins and aunts and uncles and everything are older than me. So everyone I hung around was older and obviously had more knowledge. So when I would get around kids my age, you know, I was hoping that I basically knew everything. You know, because I'd listened to the adults, I always tried to learn as much as possible. I knew that they had been around a while. I knew that they had learned stuff and that they had probably more knowledge than me. And this is the weird thing. I never had a problem with adults knowing more than me when I was younger. I had a problem with kids my own age knowing more than me. You know, like I hated being wrong to my peers, I guess, when I was little. You know, I always took pride in like, hey, I study adults. I've always studied, you know, older people, and I tried to learn what they knew. And for the most part, you know, you grow up and you know, and you know, a lot of times you're right. A lot of times you know more than your peers when you grow up in that environment. However, when I was wrong, when I was a kid and I was wrong, man, I hated it so much. And to this day, don't get me wrong, I'm not the biggest fan of being wrong, but at the same time, I accept it. I don't mind not knowing shit, because my whole purpose in life, my whole goal is to gain more knowledge, to learn more, and then not only to learn more for myself, but then to share that with somebody else, you know, to relay that message, to relay that information, because I don't know, maybe, I know not everyone feels the same way I do when it comes to information and wisdom, knowledge, all that shit. I know that not everyone feels the same way as I do. I'm a whore for it. I constantly want more and more and more information on everything. Now, I prioritize kind of what I like to, like, don't get me wrong, I want to know everything. I want to know as much as physically possible, and I know that I'm not going to know everything. I know that that's not going to happen. It's physically impossible for one person to know literally everything. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue it. You know, like I look at it like this. If you swing for the stars, well, if you land a little short of that, you're still gone pretty damn far. And that's basically my philosophy with everything, is aim for perfection. And if I fall a little short of perfection, that's still pretty damn good. And by no means do I feel like I'm there. By no means do I feel like anybody is perfect, especially me. I always feel like I'm a work in progress. And that's not bad. That's not a bad thing to do. I'm like, if you feel like this, if you feel like you shouldn't be embarrassed to feel like you don't have it all figured out. You shouldn't be embarrassed to feel like you're a work in progress. You know, you should feel encouraged about that. And here's why. The fact that you care enough to admit that you're a work in progress means that you care enough to keep gaining more and more and more. You keep wanting to advance. And that's what everybody that's great does. Whoever's the smartest, whoever's the fastest, whoever's the strongest, whoever plays the best, whoever wins the most championships, that's the person that has an endless pursuit of trying to be better. And that's never, nobody stumbles upon a lot of championships, a lot of wins, a lot of victories without failing a lot, without trying to constantly get better. Nobody is lazy and wins a ton of championships. Nobody's lazy with a bunch of wins under their belt. You know what I mean? Like, you had to have worked hard to get to that point of you being that damn good. And so what I guess I'm saying is, don't feel discouraged. Don't feel like, if you're not perfect or if you have flaws, that's a problem. It may be a problem for somebody else, but that's their fucking problem. That's not yours. You should always be a work in progress. No, the second you think that you have it all figured out is the second you are bound to have that blow up in your face. It's bound to come back and bite you. Never feel like you have it all, or know it all, or you have it all figured out, or whatever. You should never feel like that. That's arrogant as fuck to think that you're that damn good. Nobody's that damn good. And secondly, think about all the shit you had to go through to gain knowledge in the first place. Like, for anybody to be arrogant about how much they know, it boggles my mind. Like, listen, when I was younger, I understand it. I understand it fully, because when I was younger, I was like that. I felt like, man, I hung out with so many adults and I knew knowledge that it was almost like I felt like I had unlocked, the keys to wisdom, or being around that many older people that can teach you life lessons when you're young is invaluable. To know life lessons when you're fucking 12, 15, 18 years old, it is extremely huge. I mean, it helped shape me and mold me to where I am today. I mean, the way I perceive life, the way I feel about it, the finding my happiness and trying to help others find theirs. I wouldn't have this kind of information had I only hung out with kids my own age. I mean, me personally, I'm not saying nobody could, but I'm saying me personally, I would have never learned what I know now. I would never feel the way I do right now if all I did is hang out with kids my own age, because these kids barely ever taught me valuable information. I mean, don't get me wrong, your peers will teach you things. They'll give you different perspectives. They may teach you shit that you wouldn't have looked at, from the angle that you grew up in. But learning from adults who have failed dramatically and risen out of that, bounce back to be better and to be happy and to learn and to take their failures or their mistakes or their life lessons and embrace it without having to fail first is huge. It is so huge. And I encourage each and every one of you, if you watch anybody fail at anything, don't just sit back and laugh and enjoy yourself in other people's misery. Learn from that. And I don't mean just like learn what they did and then put it in the back of your head and then forget about it. I mean fucking learn. Embrace the lesson that was taught to them, and then you won't have to go through it later yourself. You know how important that shit is? You know how incredible it is to learn what it means to fail without having to fail? Like, and listen, people, I've failed a ton in my life at all kinds of shit. I'm not saying that it made me impervious to failure. What I am saying is that the more you can learn from somebody else's mistakes, the better off you're going to be in life. It's just a beautiful place to be. Learn as much as you can. I can't stop my obsession with gaining knowledge. And that doesn't, and listen, no matter how much I've focused on this shit my entire life, and I am so fucking far away from knowing everything I want to know. You know, like, I love looking at just different aspects of life that most people don't care about. And I don't want to say most people, but different aspects that a lot of people don't give a shit about. And I like learning to know, just, you don't know when that information is going to be valuable down the road. You have no idea. And you can't predict when that shit's going to come up. Like, I remember thinking back in class when we were always doing, super complicated math formulas and shit. I remember thinking, when am I ever going to need to use this? When am I ever going to need to use this? And I'll be honest with you, 99.9% of my life, I didn't have to use it. But then there's that one day that would come up randomly on a Tuesday, I think. And it would just be that same information came in extraordinary, it just came in handy in an extraordinary way. And to be honest, I don't even fucking remember where it was that I used it. I just remember there being a point where I was doing something and I needed to figure out some kind of a formula. And I was like, shit, I remember this from school. And it wasn't that I never cared much about math. I was always decent in math. I'm not a super physicist or nothing like that. I'm not claiming to be a genius in math, but I was always decent in math. It never was a problem for me. I didn't really like it because it seemed kind of boring. Just a lot of like numbers, number this, number that, number this, figure out this number, figure out that number. It was always just a lot of, it felt like the same shit, even though you were learning like different formulas and different, like reasons for why things are the way they are, or figuring things out. And a lot of it does seem irrelevant. It does. A lot of it, maybe sometimes when you're young, you're like, man, I will never need to use this. I don't care about any of this. I'm never going to have a job where I need any of this. And you might not. And maybe you'll never in your entire existence need any of it. However, maybe there's one day that some shit comes up, and you being the only one that knows and remembers that information is why you end up getting the win, why you end up succeeding, why you end up getting the job, why you have no idea where this shit's going to pay off someday. And so luckily for me, I learned that at a very, very, very early age that information is never wasted. You may not care about it. You may not think that it's necessary or that you need that information. You may think it's stupid and it's boring and why would I ever care about this? But there's always going to be some point in your life where all of a sudden that shit from third grade is going to pop back into your head and you're going to be like, damn, I'm glad I remembered that because it's so helpful now. And you don't know what it's going to be from. You don't. That's why I love it so much. That's why I love information so much, because you have no fucking clue when or where. Listen, my dad taught me stuff when I was little that I didn't even agree with, that I didn't care about at all. And then as I got older, I realized just how extremely valuable that information was. Like about perspective, about being a leader and not a follower, about helping others, about finding happiness over money, like about how invaluable money really is. You know, money is valuable when it comes to paying your bills or needing to put food on your plate or getting shelter overhead. Then it's extremely important. But other than that, It's just luxuries. You know, there's 99.9% of all the money you spend is going to be for bullshit. It really is. Like, I can think back to buying a Sega Genesis, and then the Sega CD attachment that went to the Genesis, and then adding the attachment called the 32X that went on top of the Sega Genesis, and I added all that shit. I paid for all that, and then you know where that's at now? I don't fucking know. I have no idea. I bought new systems since then, and I gave those ones away, or I sold them, or I did something with them. I don't remember. Then I ended up buying a Sega Dreamcast. I remember the Sega Saturn, a PlayStation 1, a PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3. I got a PlayStation 3 right now sitting at my house that the best thing that it's used for is collecting dust. It's amazing at that. You wouldn't believe how good it collects dust. It's so good. I'd argue it's one of the best things in my house at collecting dust, to be honest with you. And the point that I'm getting at with all this is that it doesn't, like, at the end of the day, none of that shit mattered. It was fun when I played it. I spent money on it. It was a good time. I would never say that any time I've spent money on something, it was a waste of money. I would never say it like that. However, because in my opinion, I've always learned something out of spending the money. Whether I spent the money on something and then used it once and never used it again, even then, it wasn't a waste of money. And here's why. Because it taught me how much of a fucking waste of money it was. No, but what it did is it just showed me, like, why am I spending money on shit like this all the time when I could be saving it for something important? Like, there's always lessons to be learned, man. You may make mistakes in life. You may, do things that you may spend money on shit that you realize later, man, that was such a waste of money. Or, man, why did I do that? Or why did I do this? You may say all those things. You may go through all those things. But at the end of the day, it's not a bad deal, because you need that kind of stuff. You need those kinds of lessons. Those are very helpful in realizing things. I spent $5,000 before on buying I had a 97 Explorer. I've talked about this in the past, so I'll just go through it kind of quick. But basically, I was 17, 18? I think I might have just been 18 years old. And I bought an airbag kit for my, not like the one that blows out of your steering wheel, but like the one that's like hydraulics that you can put on a vehicle. I had a 97 Explorer. At the time that I did this, I bought this in 2001, I believe it was. At that time, there was no such thing as an airbag kit, like a hydraulic system, the airbag hydraulic system. There wasn't one for a 97 Explorer. They make kits for these vehicles. So since they didn't have one, I bought one that would fit on a Chevy S10. And I know most of you are probably thinking, well, that was stupid. Absolutely. But that was the only option I really had back then. And I knew a guy that could he could fabricate it, supposedly, and he could make it work. Well, I paid this guy, who was a welder, I paid this guy to do that, and he did it. However, the system wasn't meant for my type of vehicle, so what ended up happening is one of these airbags in the back on the driver's side, when it inflated and deflated, it would rub up against my brake line. Now, most of you with half a brain kind of are assuming, kind of know where this is heading, but it rubbed through my fucking brake line after like a year and a half of having this, just up and down, just inflating, deflating. And after so long, it rubbed right through my brake line and blew fucking brake fluid out the side. And I ran into two vehicles, one of them twice, by the way, because I kind of pinballed back and forth. But I blew out I ran into two different fucking cars. I ended up having to get the airbags taken off of my vehicle. And on top of that, my insurance skyrocketed. And I was like, dude, $5,000 I paid for this system, and now I'm paying hundreds, if not thousands more because of my insurance going up. And having to, luckily I had insurance, so it covered the cars. But my point is, I still had to pay for that with insurance. And then I had to pay to get the suspension redone and get the airbags taken off. And then I ended up selling the vehicle for like not even close to what I paid for it. So all in all, it was an experience that I had paid for, and it was fun while it lasted. But it probably cost me over 10 grand total at the end of the day. or the end of the era. And I was like, would I do it again? Fuck no. But am I upset that I did it the first time? No. And here's why. Because I will never do something like that again. You know, like, if I had nothing but fun with that, and it was like the time of my life or whatever, and you know, I might end up doing it again in the future. I might end up throwing more money at this, and I don't need to. I had that fun. I had that experience. I had those times of my life. I don't need to do that anymore. So it was an expensive lesson, but it was a lesson nonetheless. I don't count that as a failure. I don't count it as a mistake. I don't count it as a waste of money. I count it as a very expensive lesson that luckily I learned the first time, instead of having to do it second or third or fourth time, wasting even more money and then learning. So my point is, you're always going to make mistakes. You're always going to be able to look back and say, man, I wish I didn't do this, or I wish I didn't do that. But the bottom line is, you are where you are for a reason. Everything that you've ever done in your life has led to where you are today. So I would never regret anything that I've ever done. Yes, there are some shitty things that, you know, you wish maybe you could have done differently and all this. But at the same time, if you learn from it, it's never a mistake. It's never a waste. You should always embrace the lessons that you learn. And it's not bad to be a work in progress. I always, listen, I'm going to make another mistake today. I'm going to make another mistake tomorrow. I'm going to make another mistake the rest of the fucking year, I'm sure, in some way, shape, or form. Maybe on the podcast. You guys may listen to this and then in a year from now be like, wait a minute, you said something different, and I may make a mistake and I may learn from it. But that's part of the podcast. That's part of growing. And speaking of which, have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? Well, the answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. When I started using Anchor to do my podcast, it was so extremely easy that I haven't even bothered to look for another app to use. I love this app. It's the only one I deal with, the only one I even recommend, period. I recommend you get on there ASAP. If you want to start a podcast, this is definitely the place to go. It's easy. You can drive around and record. You can sit in your basement and record. You can do it anywhere. It's fantastic. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start, anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. And back to what I was saying, you know, it's part of the process of growing up, of you know, getting older, is learning. It's knowing that, listen, your brain is capable of doing a lot. It's capable of absorbing a lot of information. It's capable of way more than I could even possibly explain in this episode. That's for damn sure. But you're never going to just stop. I mean, you're always going to learn new shit. I mean, think about this. 20 years ago, nobody knew what social media was. Everybody on earth that knows about social media had to have learned about it in the last 20 years. But nobody's embarrassed about learning about it. It's almost like you don't want to be late to the party. Like if you're the last one to learn about it, then you feel embarrassed. But the reality is we all learn shit at different rates. You know, I look at it like this. My wife is a phenomenal cook. She really is. She knows that she knows her way around a damn kitchen. She can fucking kill it. She also knows that there's kids that are like 8, 9, 10 years old that are on the show MasterChef Junior that would run circles around her, or me, especially me. She's way better than I am. Infinitely better than I am. But my point is, these kids are 8, 9, 10 years old. They know more in the culinary field right now than most people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And if somebody that's 50 years old learns how to flambe, you know, a dish tomorrow, Does that mean that they're idiots or that they're terrible cooks? No, it just means that they just learned a new skill. They just learned something new, some new information. It doesn't make them shitty. It doesn't make them less of a phenomenal chef. You're always learning. Shit, Gordon Ramsay, who's arguably the biggest name probably in the world when it comes to the culinary world, he is still learning. He's not going to, he would never say that, like, if you asked him right now, if he did an interview today and if you said, Gordon, do you know everything there is to know about food? Is there anything left you can learn? I guarantee you he would say, of course there's more I could learn. Absolutely. But he's not embarrassed about it. He would never be embarrassed, nor would he think to himself, man, if there's something I need to learn, if there's something that another chef younger than me knows, that means they're better than me. And that means that I'm terrible and I shouldn't, I should be miserable or I should be depressed or I should, any number of things. Like, no, the whole point is understanding you're not perfect, understanding that there's always more to learn. You're always a work in progress, and just get better. Accept that. That's a good thing, man. That means that you're always striving to advance. That means that you're always trying to get better. There's nothing wrong with that. And the second you think that you know it all, or that you're as good as you can possibly be, or that you're the best there is, period, you've already lost. It just hasn't been proven to you yet. So understand that you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to know everything. You're never going to have every ounce of information that there possibly is about everything, or about anything for that matter. And get better. Embrace your lack of knowledge. Don't look at it as a flaw. Don't look at it as you're less than, somebody else. Embrace it. Enjoy it. And always focus on getting better. There's nothing wrong. That's always a positive, is getting better. Knowing that there's always room to improve. It's a great thing. It's a great feeling when you know that there's always room to improve, because it gives you zero reason to stop trying to get better, stop learning, to stop improving. So get better. Call it out. Know that you're a work in progress. Know that you're going to get better. Do you think that I think for a second, even though I'm telling you all this, do you think for a second that I feel like I'm as good as I'm going to be at podcasting? No, I mean, I'm sure some of you listen and think I suck. But the point is, you can't let that phase you. You cannot let that deter you from what you're doing. I don't care if every person that's ever listened to my show thinks that I'm horrible. I'm determined to grow, to get better, to learn more, to figure out how, if I'm terrible at doing this, it's not, I know that it's not the message that's wrong. I feel like maybe it's the way I'm giving the message. Maybe that's what the problem is. That doesn't mean that, that doesn't mean that it's terrible and it's always going to be terrible and all that. That just means that I've pinpointed the fact that I'm not perfect. I'm not done. I'm not done improving. There's always room to get better. And I'm going to keep trying, guys. So listen, if this episode isn't your favorite, if this doesn't, convince you, that's fine. The point is, just give me some time. Give me a chance. I will get better. I promise. That's the goal. That's the point. Always get better. That's what I'm trying to do. And I am trying to encourage each and every one of you to do the same. Be a work in progress. It's totally good. It's a good thing. Stop looking at it as a negative. Stop letting other people tell you that you're not good, that it's pointless, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of this, a waste of that. There is no waste. The only thing that's wasted is your time when you don't spend it improving or getting better or learning or enjoying your life and being happy. Just don't waste your time on shit that doesn't matter. Don't waste your thoughts on things that people say, opinions that don't matter. Just know that you're not perfect. Know that there's always room to grow, and try to figure out how I can do that. How can I grow? How can I get better? How can I advance? How can I get smarter? How can I get so good that I can then help somebody else? Like I heard coming from a preacher, I heard a wise man say, I don't want to just be blessed. I want to be blessed so much that I can then help bless somebody else. And I don't mean bless them like you're spiritual, like you're God. I just mean if you're blessed with a wealth of knowledge, give that knowledge to somebody else so they can also have a wealth of knowledge. If you're blessed with money, try to have enough. If you have enough money where you can then give to somebody else, that's a beautiful thing too. If you are blessed with an abundance of food, help somebody, give some food to somebody else to help them. Hope that the cup spilleth over, it's called. Fill my cup so much that when it spills over, I can then help other people with it. It's just, there is no negative, there is no long-term loss or a problem with it. It's only beneficial for yourself and everybody else involved. So just be that. Be a work in progress. Own that. Be as good as you can be. Understand when there's things to be learned. And do everything in your power to try to learn them. But listen, guys, that's all the time I got for today. I love you, and I'm glad that you... thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate it. I don't like to go a single episode without showing you and telling you how appreciative I am of... the fans, of people listening, of anybody I can help encourage, even if you're not fans. If I've helped you in any way, shape, or form, and you hate my guts, that's still a fucking win. That's a victory, because I'm trying to help as many people as possible, whether they like me or not. So I hope that you like me, but if you don't, hey, hopefully you get some kind of value from what I'm saying. Hopefully it helps you in some way. Hopefully it corrects an issue or a problem you may be having. I just want to do good for other people, man. I just want to be as helpful as I possibly can. Not everyone gets that. The big reason why I care to be so helpful is because there's so many people in life that don't get it when they desperately want it. And I just want to give as much as I possibly can. Some other people, I've been blessed to have great mentors, great people to look up to, great help, great guidance, great information and wisdom and knowledge passed down to me that has helped me in more ways than I could possibly share. And I just want to be able to hopefully help do the same with you. So I thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you so much, more than words can describe. And if you want to get a hold of me, you could leave me a message through the Anchor app. If you want to find me, if not, you can find me on pretty much any social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn is a big one. If you're looking for me on LinkedIn, it's under Adam Rich. You'll see it for founder and host of Really Rich Podcast. If you're looking on Twitter, it's Really Rich Adam. On Snapchat, it's Really Rich. Instagram is Really Rich Podcast. I know I wish I could have just got one fucking name for all of these, but it seemed like every time I would try to land on one name that wasn't taken, I'd go to the next social media and then that name was fucking taken. So in case you guys are confused, trust me, I'm just as confused as you are. If there's any way I can zero them all in at some point, I'll try to do that. But anyway, guys, until then, I love you so much and I thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. All right. Peace. I'm out of here.